Good morning. It is July 18, 2025, and we have had a somewhat decided change in weather conditions. The heat and humidity has remained in southern central Ohio with plenty of moisture. But towards the latter part of the week, we saw some return to rainfall on the western side of Cleveland and further west in the northwest part of the state, where it had been somewhat dry as far as I could perceive it. The eastern side of Cleveland had been relatively wet and damp, and interestingly, there was a clear delineation about 15 miles south of Cleveland where rain would fall and then all of a sudden would stop. The temperatures have subsided somewhat, so everybody's probably taking a little bit of a break or a breather. However, they are coming back with force next week to what we might expect for the time of year. So it's not something where we can suddenly let the foot off the pedal. The 100 days is not over yet. Online today, we got Dr. Dave Shetlar, we got Dr. David Gardner, Dr. Xiaowei Wu, and Todd Hicks. Dr. Wu, can you take it away, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Today I would like to share the site visits I did this week and to share with you about what happened. So on Monday, my student and I went to visit two golf courses in Cincinnati area. And we were calling for the annual bluegrass weaver problem. And when we got there, we saw, okay, this damage looks like kind of like ABW damage near the edge of the fairways. This damage first appeared in about mid-June when the late install ABW were happening at that time. And then, so here's another image which is shown in the approach. Very bad damage as well. ABW can be active in these areas and cause damage. And we did vacuuming for the ABW adults and found good numbers. So I feel like, yes, ABW are contributing factors for this damage, and looks like the damage occurred a few weeks ago and still the grass is still struggling to recover. However, look at this, it's on the same side, and this damage appeared in the intermediate rough and here, and even the damage was kind of everywhere even in the middle of the fairway. That made me think like this may not be ABW damage, can be some other factors contributing to this, because if it's ABW, usually the first generation, they concentrate near the edge of the fairways instead of in the middle. And at this time, it's not for the second generation damage to occur like this yet. So I was thinking there are definitely other factors contributing to this damage. And here's another side. This is even worse. And you can see that was very terrible damage and can be ABW. We found good numbers, ABW on this side as well. But when you look at here, it's pretty wet, and in the bunker, it was soaked with water because lots of rainfalls recently, and the ground was pretty soaked. And both of these sites are old golf courses, had poor drainage. And here's on the same side, another hole, so very bad damage, wet. So I took the samples and take a look further on the lab. That's what I see. So I suspect disease can be associated as well, and that's true. And we found lots of leaf spot spores, and here more. They're just loaded with the leaf spot spores. So looks like, I feel like it's a kind of combination factors. Yes, ABW is one of the factors, but meanwhile, the wet and in the past couple of weeks, the heat stress as well, combined with the poor drainage, contributed to the damage. And meanwhile, disease occurrence such as leaf spot and the running occurred under the favorable environment conditions. So past are present, but meanwhile, environmental stress, disease are all contributing factors, in my opinion. So when you choose a treatment plan, it's important to take a look at the full picture of the the diagnosing factors before you make management plans. And for EBW control, at this time you have both the first generation adults and meanwhile the second generation larvae. So it's overlapping generations. From my point of view, I would say for treatment plans, you can use combination products of pyrethroid and neodymium can target both the adults and also some of the early style of the EBW larvae, but not all of them. And some of the diamase products can be used as well and insect growth regulators. But please keep in mind that rotate the products to avoid potential development of insecticide resistance. Finally, another thing I want to mention is that I still need change back slides for research. If you have such information, please reach out to me. Here's my contact information. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. Mr. Todd Hicks, sir, what kind of death and destruction do you have?
Good morning, everybody. Good day, everybody. Disease updates this week. In the last 7 to 10 days, summer patch has joined our ever-building list of problems that are affecting us. It's about a month to a month and a half earlier than what I normally see it hitting Central Ohio, Northern Ohio. So be on the lookout for that. Remember, if you think you have summer patch or if you think you have take-all, fungicides at this point aren't going to help you. There's not a real good answer for a curative treatment with fungicides if you have either one of those root pathogens. They normally talk about de-stressing the turf and or feeding it. Be very careful if you're going to feed turf in this weather. Something really slow and low would probably be the way to go if you're dealing with either one of those problems. The other thing that's really been popping into the diagnostic center is nematode samples. So with Dr. Wu's example with leaf spot, probably 90% of my samples that are coming in have been leaf spot. I've been preaching for years that leaf spot is a horrible disease because it looks like a lot of other things. So if you have a problem, chances are it probably is going to be leaf spot due to the wet weather, the humid conditions, and the fact that most of us are dealing with anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches of organic matter buildup, which is holding water up in our surfaces. But also, if it's really persistent and you've been putting something down that should at least provide some kind of help, and it doesn't seem to be, you might want to get checked for nematodes. Nematodes aren't a primary problem in Ohio. They're an add-on. They're kind of like, I tell people all the time, they're like that lion that sees that 3-legged antelope that's 90 years old, and they walk over and eat it because it's time to. So much like that, nematodes are sitting and waiting. They've been building. And if you've had a problem in the past or you feel you've had a problem, might want to get those numbers out there so you know what you're dealing with, because as long as this heat stays on and it's humid and wet, nematodes the numbers are going to continue to rise. So better to take care of that problem sooner than much later. The other thing that I have my eyeball out for the future looking for, I'm very surprised I have not seen gray leaf spot yet. So those of you managing ryegrass, if you're managing ryegrass, make sure you're on a program because it's a killer and there's no coming back from it. So it's much easier to be on a preventive program, save your turf and not have to go through the whole, oh my God, what's going on, reseeding, resodding, whatever takes place. Everything else is a month early. I expect to see gray leaf spot before too long, taking out some big areas of ryegrass on sports field. For everyone else, golf guys included, anything you can do to take the stress off the turf, switching to smooth rollers, height, change your height of cut if you need to a little bit. Make sure you're on the phosphates programs. They do so much for turf health. And if you can get out there and solid tine and open up your turf to get drainage and air move it, all that's good for the roots and the system. It's gonna make your summer much easier than what it may turn out to be. The forecast in long term, I just saw something from the almanac that says we're supposed to have another warmer than normal fall. So if we get into a situation like we were last year, and people are like, well, what'd they say? Is it going to be wet or is it going to be dry? Well, as a pathologist, I don't care. I've got a whole handful of diseases like it hot and wet. And on the other hand, I got a whole bunch of diseases that like it hot and wet, or excuse me, hot and dry. So that really doesn't matter. It's going to be awful. And if it turns dry for long periods of time, we may not get good time to recover again. So do what you can now, so that the rest of the summer goes a little easier and fall goes even better. That's all I got.
Oh boy, that was just fabulous, Todd. Now I
Yeah,
can tell you,
that's all, huh?
I've been
I'm pre-
talking to about 6 superintendents a day on the phone, and at least 6 of them have come visit a day, dropping samples off for the last 2 weeks. So I've had plenty of practice at this for the last 2 weeks.
I will say I'm pretty sure I saw some gray leaf spot up on our we have an area with tall fescue ryegrass that's it's relatively heavily shaded, and we can push water on it. And we've seen grey leaf spot on it previously. So those little dark grey lesions were showed up, and that turf had a little bit of a twist at the end of the tip. It didn't look like it was very happy. So I'd say grey leaf spot is probably running around. How much damage, like you said, Todd, that still remains to be seen. And of course, the cool down today and hopefully a little bit earlier part of the next few days may help hold on for another little bit. Dr. Gardner, what have we got from the weeds?
A couple of weeks ago, I whined about how my hydroseeded ryegrass succumbed to pythium, and some of it came through, and I was thinking that was okay. And then I was like, oh, yeah, gray leaf spot. Forgot all about that. So that'll be fun for me. But, if I'm being honest, I found our first two presenters' presentations to be a little bit depressing. And so I want to say from death comes life. Unfortunately, though, it's in the form of, like grassy weeds. So, honestly, most of the grasses that we manage on purpose because they're pretty are remarkably intolerant of the conditions at this time of the year. Even if you have adequate rainfall, and I know some of you don't, they still struggle with the heat. And so there are a variety of different grasses that are a little bit more competitive in these conditions. One of which is quackgrass, the one with the long clasping auricles. And, the question becomes, is there such a thing as a herbicide that will selectively remove quackgrass from desired turfgrass? And the answer simply is no. And that also can be said for orchard grass and for Bermuda grass and for nimblewill. Okay, now for Bermuda grass and nimblewill, there are a couple of herbicides, mesotrione and tepramazone, that if you look at the label, they have programs for selective removal. 3 applications, spaced 2 to 3 weeks apart. The thing is that I find that there's some people that report success with that, and there are others that do not. And so while those products are available to potentially control Bermuda grass and nimblewill selectively, sometimes consistency of control can be frustrating. That said, it certainly is an option for you, okay? But honestly, glyphosate is probably going to be the way to go. Now, another one that we see at this time of the year, but for the opposite reason, is rough bluegrass. So instead of this one thriving in these conditions, this is one that goes dormant. And so oftentimes it goes dormant in such a way that it mimics insect or disease damage, and then you peel back the dead leaf matter and you see a whole bunch of imbibed stolons. And so this is just rough bluegrass that has gone dormant. The annoying thing about this is that you can't put a herbicide on this right now because it's dormant. It's not going to be effective, and you can't slit seed into it because those stolons, once once weather conditions become more favorable, any of the plants that emerge from the stolons are going to be much more competitive than the seedlings that you're trying to reestablish in rough bluegrass's place. So for any of the grasses that I just showed, the reason that I'm talking about this is that we always tell people the middle of August to the end of September is when you should reseed areas that you desire to reestablish, right? And so this is the time to start thinking about trying to remove some of those grasses that you want to replace. Glyphosate has and continues to be the best option for that. Usually you can get away with one application of glyphosate, although I recommend making an application, waiting for a period of time to see if you have any regrowth, and then you can always make a second application. So that's why I'm talking about this now. That would give you enough time before the middle of August to start treating those areas in preparation for those autumn seeding operations. Now, complicating this for homeowners is that glyphosate is no longer easily available to them. And the glyphosate replacement products tend to contain herbicides that, while they're extremely effective for the control of grasses, can leave a residual that would interfere with seedling germination and establishment. Now, one of them in particular is fluazepop, which is sold as Fusilade. If you look at the label for that, it says don't be trying to reseed treated areas for 30 days. But if you look at homeowner products that contain Fusilade, they say you're safe to seed within 7 to 14 days, depending on the product. I would still say, err to the side of giving that enough time to make sure that the herbicide residues have dissipated before you attempt to seed. But again, now is the time to start thinking about those applications. Some weeds that are visible at this time of the year include the clovers, and I'm including bird's foot trefoil, this picture that I like to show because, well, this was seeded on purpose, but you have to be aware of that there are people that are seeding this in turf on purpose. And so when they do that in close proximity to places where you don't want this, it can sometimes spread into those areas, okay? And so for clover and related species, 2 or 3-way herbicides, including MCPP or dicamba, are going to be effective. Fluroxapyr is also a good active ingredient. Now, if you're on golf courses, you have the option of using clopyralid. Now, I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman this week who said that he was tank mixing different herbicides to control weeds on the course. And the question became, can he tank mix this particular herbicide that he uses with Lawntrail, which is one of the branded products that's just straight clopyralid. And when that's not on the label, it can be kind of a difficult question to answer. Theoretically, you should be able to do that. But there's always the step where you do the jar test where you mix the herbicide with water to make sure that there isn't some kind of incompatibility. But then treat a small area first before going large scale when you do those kind of things. Probably the easier answer would be to find a formulated product that contains multiple active ingredients, of which clopyralid is one of them, rather than doing that tank mix. But again, if you're going to, like I said, those extra steps to make sure that it's not going to cause a problem is a good idea. But just a reminder that control of perennial weeds such as bird's foot trefoil and white clover is actually going to work better if you just wait till fall, because those perennial broadleaf weeds tend to be more effectively controlled at that time of the year. Another one that, okay, these aren't necessarily flowering right now, but ground ivy, creeping Charlie, but it's still pretty easily visible in the turf. And a reminder that there is a remarkably effective active ingredient for the control of creeping Charlie. It's called flumioxazin. It's one of the active ingredients in a combination herbicide called Shore Power. And I caution people, do not use Shore Power unless it's the months of June, July, and August on grass that's green but not actively growing. In other words, you're not having to mow it more than once a week, because otherwise you can see considerable phytotoxicity to the desired turf grass. But that product is remarkably effective for the control of ground ivy. But I wanted to put that reminder out there because, well, it is the month of July, which is, one of the 3 that I said was a good time of the year to make applications of that particular product. There are 3- and 4-way herbicides that contain triclopyr, dicamba, quinclorac, and/or fluroxapyr that can also be effective for the control of creeping Charlie. But again, just a reminder that that's one to maybe target at this time of the year. And the last thing that I wanted to say was just a reminder of the importance of properly identifying your grassy weeds prior to treating them. So this is a photo from an email that I got this week where it was reported that a lawn care operator that this gentleman works with made an application of a product and absolutely nothing happened to this grassy weed, no discoloration or anything. I could say what the herbicide product was, but that could be construed as negative endorsement to the exclusion of nearly every other product that would be equally ineffective for the control of this weed. This particular weed is paspalum, okay? And so when you have this, you have to use topramazone, okay? So again, that's the only active ingredient that's effective for the control of that weed. So rather than repeating what I talked about last week with grassy weed control, if you're interested, I talked about this last week, and I think there's recordings that are available. I spent a little bit more time talking about the AIs that you can use for various grassy weed species. But again, just to reiterate the importance of identifying the grass accurately and not just assuming that it's crabgrass and using a product that isn't going to be effective. Ed, that's what I have for this week.
Thank you, Dave. The candor is much appreciated. Dr. Shetlar, what death and destruction do you have?
Last week I showed you pictures of my northern Mass Chafer light trap catches up until last Friday, and I pointed out that it looks like the population has peaked. Everything's decreasing. Well, no. Here was last Friday, and we got a couple of little short rainfall events, and boom, they're back again. I've seen this a few years ago where we had sort of a double adult flight for this, but again, all it really tells us is that normally our mass chafer flight is over with by this time. By mid to late July, I might get one or two adults in the light trap, just those lingering ons, but they're obviously continuing. Remember that when the adults fly, the adults emerge at night, they mate, go back into the soil, and immediately start laying eggs. But what that means is that we've got egg laying here in mid to late July, and those eggs are going to take about 20 days to hatch. And so now we're into August for egg hatch and first instar larvae being coming up to the soil thatch interface to feed. And again, I'm just trying to warn people that if you used imidacloprid or merit products in June, there is a distinct possibility that the effective residues of those will have dissipated by August. And so just be real careful. We haven't had that problem with any of the diamide chemistry. We haven't had that problem with Arena, the longest lasting of the neonicotinoids. So if you've used those products, that you're probably okay. The other doom and gloom that Ed wanted me to talk about is that I noticed that Brandenburg down in North Carolina put out a notice this week that they are being overrun by fall armyworm again. And so there are big populations in our southern states again. But if you've been watching the weather fronts, everything seems to be coming from the west. We're not getting those, hurricane or hurricane-like fronts that come out of the Gulf straight north. So as far as I'm concerned, we haven't had a weather event, and I don't see one predicted. Actually, if you look in the Atlantic Ocean, there's nothing there. Normally at this time, we start seeing some starts of hurricane-like weather, and it's blank out there. So I'm not seeing, my feeling is we're not going to get a blow-in of the fall armyworms like we saw back in 21. But the potential is there. I always just want to caution us to be on the lookout for that. That's all I've got for this weekend.
Dave, you've now created the opportunity for mass destruction purely because you said it ain't going to happen. You got to be kidding me. You put the hex on it. They're going to be the fall armyworm are going to be walking, right? Literally walking from North Carolina to here in the next 2 weeks. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
I do my best for the entomology world.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. All right, folks. Following up with death and destruction, Dave is after putting the hex on us for more death and destruction. Thank you, Dave. Folks, a couple other things to remember. Early August, so 5th and 6th. I hope I got my dates right. Both the OTF and Olka field days. Is that correct, Dave Gardner, or is it 6th and 7th?
5th and 6th.
5th and 6th. 5th and 6th of August. All right, 2 field days back to back. And then we've got the ATI scholarship outing on September 29th at Pine Hills. And we also have a couple other events coming up with the OTF scholarship outing. And I don't exactly know the dates on that, but look for emails, get involved. it's that time of year where we start to think about maybe calming down, but obviously still everybody's in the throes of death and destruction. Todd Hicks kind of twitched his mouth a little bit and went, "No, we're still struggling here." We will be back next week, folks. Good luck, and we all count on you. Don't screw it up.